Dan Illman, Mike Beer, race number 9 at Belmont Park on Saturday is the Grade 3 Hill Prince Stakes for 3-year-olds on the turf. Let's take a peek at this field. We're traveling 1 1/8 on the inner. We have a field of 9, and I want to begin, Mike, with the horses coming out of the Grade 3 Saranac at Saratoga on September the 2nd. The winner of the race, Voodoo Song, is not here. He came back to run second in the Commonwealth Derby at Laurel with a 95 buyer. He was on the lead that day. I think horses like Yoshida, horses like Bricks and Mortar, horses like Rocketry all suffered from some degree of trouble in that race.
I think that's true. I will say that I didn't see any real trouble for Rocketry. I just feel like maybe he was a horse who they were, stepping him up there just to see where he fits.
And turning him back in distance.
And cutting him back to, short. He may want to go longer. That's another good point. I just feel like maybe he was found out a little bit against better horses. He ran fine. I didn't see any real trouble for him. I guess the other two horses, it's pretty easy to make excuses for them. I thought, and I don't know if you agree with this, I thought way more so for Bricks and Mortar than Yoshida. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but it felt to me like nothing really worked out for Bricks and Mortar.
Well, sort of a different kind of trouble, wasn't it? I mean, Bricks and Mortar was off slow and then sandwiched right after the start, and then the next thing you know, he made this big harness racing blush all the way on the back stretch, and Joel Rosario then realized, this Voodoo Song's a little bit tougher than I thought, and he raced Voodoo Song all the way through the turn, all the way in the lane, and this horse was only giving up ground grudgingly late. He was beaten 3/4 of a length. He must have been pretty much all in 6 furlongs from home.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, they did. It was sort of surprising to see, I guess because he got away so poorly from the gate, and I guess, Rosario, I feel like he, maybe was giving Voodoo Song a little respect there. Didn't want to let him get too far away, and he made a really early run at him, and right when he got up to him on the far turn, Voodoo Song was like, I still got something left. He moved right away from this horse again. I loved the way that Bricks and Mortar kept after it, though. I mean, he had made no mistakes at all before that race, and I don't think he made a mistake in that race. I thought he ran great, and in a lot of ways, I just think he's the horse to beat right back in here. Whether I bet him or not, I think he's the horse to beat in here.
While Bricks and Mortar made that long, wide, premature move, Yoshida was saving ground in mid-pack, and sort of at a key moment in between horses on the far turn, he got shuffled out of it. And then he had to angle all the way to the outside in the stretch, and I think that cost him. He was running late. Maybe he wouldn't have won it, but he only got beat a neck, and I think maybe that was the race that Bill might have been waiting for, because I think he'd been disappointed with some of Yoshida's prior efforts.
Yeah, well, I think he was really disappointing in the Belmont Derby. I mean, maybe he didn't want to go 1 1/4 miles, but he didn't run well that day, and I was pretty disappointed with his Hall of Fame. He only got beat, whatever, half a length in there, 3/4. But
he had every shot.
He had every chance. Now, I didn't really like that performance from him. Maybe he ran better last time. I get it. He was in behind horses through the second turn. He was sort of held up a little bit. I personally didn't think it cost him all that much, and once they swung him out at the top of the stretch, I mean, he came with a full head of steam at Voodoo Song in that race. They got to the 8th pole, and I was like, well, this horse is going right by here. He looked to me like he was going to win that race, and then he was denied at the end, and I think he was denied without excuse. I just don't want him back in this race. He can win. I don't want him back.
Is it possible he's more a miler?
Oh, maybe. You know what? That's a good point. He may not really want to go that far, in which case, I guess the 1 1/8 here doesn't really help him.
Rocketry's breakthrough performance came in 11 furlongs. In the Saranac, I thought he was blind switched very briefly, then tried to follow Yoshida's run on the turn without much success. I think this distance is a little bit short, but Jimmy Jerkins can read the condition book. He knows this race is 1 1/8. He's showing some confidence in running him back.
Yeah, listen, he's a nice horse. I'm a big fan of his. I just sort of felt like he was found out a little bit last time. Maybe he can improve.
The one is Secretary at War, another horse trained by Jimmy Jerkins. How is he so far back in the early portion of the Franklin Simpson at Kentucky Downs going 7 furlongs? I mean, this is a horse that was shown speed in just about all of his other starts. He was projected to be on the lead in this race, and he was last.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't like the yielding ground, and that is a little bit of a quirky turf course over there. Who knows what the reason is? He didn't run poorly trying to rally from out of it, but it doesn't feel like that's his best style. He's got the inside post. It's a big advantage at 1 1/8 on the inner turf at Belmont Park, where it's really at a premium. Saving ground's at a premium early. He's going to be able to do that, and he's going to get out front, I think, and make the pace in here. The question is he good enough? And I don't think he is. And does he want to go 1 1/8 miles? And I don't think he does.
Hasn't shown it thus far that 1 1/8 miles is what he wants. Our friends at Timeform US agree with you concerning the pace. They think that Secretary of War this time is going to make the front over the 4 Frostmorn, the 7 Hieroglyphics. Let's start with Frostmorn, because in many ways he is the horse to beat. Winner of 3 of his last 4 races, 4 of 6 lifetime. He blew away a suspect field last time out in the Grade 3 Kent Stakes over Good Going at Delaware. but he showed that this distance isn't an issue. And if he gets this kind of trip and is able to settle in second behind a horse that might be questionable at this distance, there's a chance that Frostmore just takes this thing over on the turn and says, catch me if you can.
Right.
The one caveat is this. We have not seen this horse since July the 15th. Christophe Clement, for some reason, backed off on him, was not happy with the way this horse is training.
Right.
Is there a chance he's not tight enough for this spot?
I think there's probably a pretty good chance of that. We'll see what happens. I mean, I would hope that, after everything didn't go right for him this summer, Clement, I'm sure he had to be pointing for this race. So I would assume that he's got him ready to go here today. And if he's ready to go and ready to run his best race, maybe he is just better than these horses. But you know what, Dan? I don't think we know that yet. I mean, this is a horse who, as impressive as he was in his last 2 wins, he was not beating horses like this. He was beating very weak fields, I thought. And because he missed the entire summer, basically, he never got to run against the better horses in this division. He's going to get to run against them now, and we'll see if he's good enough. I mean, I would never throw him out. I would have to use him in any bets that I made, but I don't know that I'd be betting him to win at any kind of short price.
And off a similar layoff in the Woodhaven to kick off this season, he was a little bit short as the favorite, losing to Secretary of War at Aqueduct. Hieroglyphics has won 3 of his last 4 races for Todd Pletcher. He's a little bit better than I ever gave him credit for, but I still think he needs to step up his game another notch or two against this very tough field.
Yeah, he's improving from race to race for Pletcher. He's probably going to have to improve again to beat this field.
I know you're a fan of Small Bear, who returned to turf last time out in his first start for trainer Jeremiah Engelhardt. He was running at Hieroglyphics late. I am not concerned about the 1 1/8. He showed he could handle that on dirt at Saratoga, no sweat. Is he this good?
Yeah, I don't know if he's this good. He's a pretty cool little horse, though, and he's very underrated, too. He's one of those horses who he's just going to be probably a really big price in this race, and I wouldn't totally count him out.
The 5 Lecullen is a little bit green, but he can step, and he popped a 93 buyer against a weak field of entry-level allowance horses at Belmont last month. I like the way he won this race. I'm just worried that he happened to catch a really tough field for his graded stakes debut.
Yeah, I'm worried about the same thing for him, but I do think he's pretty good, and he's really, they switched him to turf 3 starts back. He has upped his game in a big way. This is a pretty good horse with a lot of upside. I'm not so sure he can't go with these horses, Dan.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Grade 3 Hill Prince Stakes. I just think that Frostmore, if he is right, and that's a big if, at a relatively short price, he's going to get the right trip, and he's shown me enough that he can certainly step with these horses. I actually like the fact that he kind of avoided the big boys. Those horses knocked heads. They really might have taken some of the starch away. He's a relatively fresh horse for the fall. You've been banging the drum for Ticonderoga ever since his debut. Right? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. He's just the kind of horse that when you watch him run, you know he has a tremendous amount of ability. He's just very, very green. He's his own worst enemy, and he doesn't have a lot of early speed, so he needs a little pace.
Yeah, all those things are true. And it's, he's got post 8 going 9 furlongs on the inner turf here. He's going to need a trip too in this race, so we'll see if he can get one. I feel like I have to give him one more chance. After he was so good as a 2-year-old without even really knowing what he was doing, running one good race after another. And then when he won his seasonal debut this year, and I thought he was really good winning that race, I just sort of felt like he might win a bunch of these 3-year-old turf stakes races as the year goes on. As it turns out, he hasn't won since. I still think he's run well enough, though, that he deserves one more chance. That race, too, I don't know what happened in the Belmont Derby last time, and I'm just going to put a line through it. He's had time since that race. He didn't run his race that day. He had a real trip in that Pennine Ridge. I mean, they walked on the lead in there. He
was ridden right into
behind
traffic,
horses, and he really, after he regathered himself, he was running again at the end. That race is not as disappointing as it looks. I'm sort of glad that Chad gave him a little time off after the Belmont Derby. He's sort of freshened him up a little bit. I think he fits this race really well. I love the way he's working coming into this. And if he can find a way to get a trip and then run his best race, I think he can beat these horses. And he's 10-1 on the morning line. I'm going to bet him and see what happens. Maybe it's the last time I ever bet this horse, but I'm betting him on Saturday.
I think you can argue that coming into this season, he was listed and ranked as the 3rd best 3-year-old turf horse to be in the country, behind Oscar Performance and behind Good Samaritan. And it just has not panned out. I think he needs to be ridden like Sadler's Joy. You need to take him back. You need to produce him at the very last moment. I think he gets distracted when you produce him too early and get him into the clear.
Horse,
but he's a very talented horse, and the price on the morning line at the very least is right. Ticonderoga's 10-1 on the line. You're going 8, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going 4, 2, 6, and 5 in the Grade 3 Hill Prince, race 9 at Belmont on Saturday. It has an approximate post time of 4:48 Eastern. Best of luck.